All right, well, thank you for joining us. This is a fantastic summit. We've been hearing from the organizers that they're just loving the turnout and loving the energy of all of you guys today. So we hope you're enjoying your time. I want to take a really quick survey of the audience before we get started. It'll help us know a little bit better who we're talking to. But primarily, I want to know how many folks we have here that actually work in commercial real estate specifically. Maybe just show of hands, raise your hand. Okay, we've got quite a few. And then from what I'm gathering, we have quite a few from the banking industry, maybe a little bit from the design industry as well, engineering, architecture, interior design. Do we have a few folks from one of those in here? Anybody? Oh, we've got two. All right, sounds good. And then last, how many of you are from Omaha or the greater Omaha region? Go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, that's just about everybody. So I think that helps us know what information is going to be most helpful. So we are going to talk about in this session what I believe and what I think many of you will agree is one of the most pressing issues that at least our region is facing and many other regions like it, which is talent and having enough available, skilled, ready-to-go talent for the jobs and the growth that our cities are experiencing. So I feel very lucky because I've been told by many conference goers that we have the best panel in the whole program. We have 5 professionals here that are going to join us and share some comments from a range of perspectives on what we can or should or are doing to attract and retain talent in our communities. So I'm going to provide really short introductions, and then I'm going to ask each of them to provide a little bit more about themselves and their experience so you understand who they are. So first up, we have Jim Collison. He's sitting here all the way on the left, and Jim is the performance team lead with Gallup Technology. As you'll hear, we have 3 businesses represented on our panel, and all 3 are international businesses having offices all across the globe as well as a presence. So Jim, thank you for joining us. All right, next we have Barry Wilkinson. Barry Wilkinson is the team leader of community readiness at Offutt Air Force Base in Bellevue, Nebraska. What Barry will tell you is that he works a lot with the transition of military officers from active duty into civilian life and into employment. So he provides us a great perspective there. Next up is Katie Beach. We positioned her strategically in the middle of this all-male panel otherwise, but Katie can hold her own. She's the manager of talent acquisition at Valmont Industries. Many of you probably know about Valmont, but they're an international irrigation company headquartered here in the region. Next up is Jamie Herbert, Assistant Vice President of Human Resources at Union Pacific Railroad. We've had the pleasure of working a lot with Union Pacific. They do a lot of hiring, a lot of talent acquisition, both here in Omaha and elsewhere. So thanks, Jamie. And last up, but not least, is Jeremy Fisher, the Associate Director of the Business Career Programs at Creighton University. If you don't know already, Creighton University is a unique gem in our community because of the large percentage of their students that come in from outside of the region to attend Creighton University. Obviously, they're also on a national scale as they compete in education and athletics and many other areas. So they're helping attract talent all the time. So, like I said, we are going to be talking about both the blessing and the curse of having low unemployment. When we wrote this, our area's low unemployment was at 2.9%. It has since dropped to 2.7%. That is a wonderful blessing as we have people who are working, but it is also a really big challenge for companies who are trying to attract talent. So we are going to do just a quick walk down the row and have these guys provide a little perspective of who they are. And then I have a couple of questions prepared, but I actually want to spend about half the time today taking questions from the audience. We want to hear what you want to know about and what you want to talk about. And for anybody who asks a question, I have a nice We Don't Coast Omaha t-shirt up here that you can take home with you. So there's a little cherry on the end of that to get you to get you asking some questions. So we will start with Jim, if that's okay. Jim, provide us a little perspective and maybe answer, what attracting what attracting talent, what kind of work you do at Gallup to attract talent.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it says performance team lead. I'm a IT manager, so I have some .NET resources that I oversee during the day. My night job at Gallup is to recruit and retain some of the best talent here in Omaha. And we've done that through internship programs as well as the traditional recruiting that you'd see around town. We do international recruiting. We focus here in the United States, but certainly we are bringing folks in from overseas as well as where we need them, especially in technology from that standpoint. So I'm here to talk about that, and if you have some questions along those lines, especially in the area of internships, we've developed our own over the last couple of years. That'd be my specialty. Barry?
Thank you, Jim. Well, as Sarah said, I'm Barry Wilkinson. I'm the team leader out at the Offutt Airman and Family Readiness Center. The center out there provides services to the military members and their families. We have coined the phrase from the cradle to the grave because anything involves the family or involves a military service member, we normally get involved in financial, children, family issues, whatever it may be, wounded warriors, deployments, that type of thing. But probably one of our largest programs is the transition program. And this is where we try to spend a week with the military member that is getting ready to exit the service, whether they're separating or retiring, and how to translate those skills into the civilian workforce, how to identify what strengths and weaknesses they have and what areas they need to improve upon to be able to become successful in the civilian environment. We do partner a lot with the local community here. All of these companies represented up here, we have partnered with for years. We hold our own career fairs, workshops. We have employer panels that come in and help the military member understand how the public views the military and the hurdles that they need to overcome to be successful in the civilian community. We've developed locally here a mentoring program, which Governor Ricketts is now looking at mentoring throughout the state of Nebraska for the military members and businesses. So we're working with him to develop that throughout the state. So we do have some benchmark things here that we've done to help those people make that transition, and we thank the companies here for their participation in that as well.
Hi, my name is Katie Beach, and as Sarah said, I'm the manager of talent acquisition for Valmont Industries. We're headquartered here in Omaha, but we have manufacturing facilities in over 30 countries. We have about between 11 and 12,000 employees globally as well. And my position within the organization, I was brought in a year and a half ago to help transition our talent acquisition initiative from a reactive to a more proactive process. And so listening to Jim talk about his internship program, and I'm sure a lot of the other strategic things that we'll talk about that our organizations are doing are really where I'm starting within the organization to build, so we can make that transition to a more strategic approach to how we're attracting talent, retaining talent, and continuing to really just attract the best talent that we can to our organization to fulfill our critical roles.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Herbert from Union Pacific. To give you some sense of scale, we've got about 47,000 employees. Last year across our 23-state system, we hired about 6,000 folks. So my scope of responsibility includes the recruiting function, and I've got a few other hats that I wear: diversity, EEO. I'm responsible for our generalist organization. Like my colleagues, I'm interested, obviously, in hitting my short-term recruiting objectives, but very, very interested from a long-term talent pipeline standpoint. What are we doing here in the community all the way down to the K through 12 level? And how are we combining some high-touch, traditional recruiting mechanisms with a high-tech approach? So I look forward to talking about that.
Good morning, my name is Jeremy Fisher. I'm the Associate Director of the Creighton University Career Center. My two primary responsibilities is on the one side, I work with our students in our Hyder College of Business, everything from career counseling to resume writing and interviewing skills, but more importantly is in charge of the internship programs and job placement and helping our business students getting to graduate and professional schools. So that's what I do on the student side. The other side of my hat is the employer relations person for the university. So I do employer outreach for not only Omaha companies, but national companies. We spend a lot of our time meeting with employers, alumni of our institution, to help get them to hire our students for employment opportunities for both full-time, entry-level, and internship positions. Because of my role, we do our outcomes and placement statistics, so we do a lot of collaborational work with our admissions office. Anytime prospective high school students are coming to campus, we talk about the business community in Omaha, all the great opportunities for internships and diversity and the arts, the media, the sports, the vibrant startup community that we have here as selling points. And there's so many good selling points about Omaha, and I'm sure we'll hit on a lot of those today. Another thing I do is we have a 4-year leadership development program for our business students, so we do a lot of community outreach and engagement. I actually used to run the Youth Leadership Omaha program for 6 years. That used to be a chamber program that they still run, the Leadership Omaha, the professional version, where we're still trying to get our college students and also the high school students more engaged with the community to see all the great opportunities that are here.
Great. All right. Let's see. I'm going to have to hold this. Sorry about that. All right. Well, I think that was a great introduction. I think it's going to give you a little preview of what we're going to be talking about. So all of our employers talked about how they have immediate needs that they have to fill, but they've really had to move into an area where they've had to look at, okay, long term, 10 years from now, how can we plan? How can we be involved in things 10 years from that are going to affect our talent pipeline in the long term? So I'm going to toss this maybe back to Jamie and ask Jamie if he can say a little bit about what they're doing to look at that developing talent in the pipeline, and then also what are still some hurdles that we haven't reached, what things haven't we overcome?
So a big deal for us, we are generally what I refer to as a build talent organization rather than a buy talent organization, meaning that we like to hire at the entry levels and then develop and promote from within wherever possible. We have, for many, many years, had a traditional college intern program. If I were to rewind the tape to, say, 6, 7 years ago, the majority of those internships were year-round, focused type partnership with the local schools. One of the things that we found, to fast forward to today, is that we had to look at a different internship model. So we recruit actively today at 29 schools across the country. And over the summer months, like some other organizations here in town, we'll bring as many as 100 summer interns into Omaha, put them up in housing over at the UNO Scott Dorm Center. Pretty cool deal there, just simply in terms of living together and getting to know each other, and not only know each other in terms of the other interns from Union Pacific, but there's a handful of other organizations that use that same resource. So you've got networking, relationship building, opportunities to do cool work in terms of the day, but then go out weekends, evenings, get to see the community. And what's been interesting for us, so we got heavy into this probably 3-4 years ago, and we may have over-engineered it our first year through, thinking that we needed to organize all these events. We really didn't. The kids are very, very creative, right? So get them started, give them some flexibility and autonomy. So that's been one key lever for us, and we continue to learn from that. The big pain point for me, and I know I'm certainly not alone here, is the STEM pipeline: science, technology, engineering, and math. So just some quick data points to get us all grounded. There was a study done here recently that went back over a 2-year period of time. I think the study, this is just IT, the time frame looked at was February of 13 through February of this year. 17,000 IT jobs in terms of the demand, and about 1,700 active job seekers. That's just the today snapshot, right? So my point is there's a need today. There's going to continue to be a need as we look out into the foreseeable future. And we're involved along with some other employers and all levels of the education system here in Omaha as part of an effort that actually the Chamber's facilitating to figure out what we collectively can do about it to make Omaha an IT tech hub. So don't have the answers, but a lot of good concepts that are starting to get some traction.
Jim or Katie, you guys want to add to that a little bit about what you're doing for the long term?
Certainly we've backed the truck up to the high school level because we've realized we need to keep Nebraska kids here in Nebraska or Iowa kids here in Nebraska. We'll take it both ways that way. But and so we've poured a lot of time and attention to going back that far, having our students on campus for a modified program. Certainly they're available. We kind of stole from the Boy Scouts and said, hey, let's have them meet with us on Saturdays. And surprisingly enough, we get kids that show up at 9 o'clock on Saturday mornings for 6 weeks in the fall and 6 weeks in the spring to be a part of our program. It costs us almost nothing to do this, by the way. They're meeting in our facilities. We get some of our best developers who love to teach to come in and do that and pay them a little bit more to spend their time on Saturdays. The feedback we got from the kids was, can we spend more time here? When we asked them, they're like, 4 hours isn't enough, which just shocked us. That they wanted more, they were hungry for more. It really changes the equations when we put the kids in the college programs. I've gotten feedbacks from the Rake School here at UNL, and they've said your kids interview a little bit differently than the other ones because we give them interview experience in doing that. They get a chance to interview with our IT managers. And so we have found that to be very, very important. One of the things I do want to emphasize when we talked about challenges on this is that our low unemployment and our low cost of living work against us sometimes. I had a college intern that I was pulling out of University of Southern California this year. Very talented. We were looking forward to having him. He called me just a couple weeks ago and said, I took a job at Symantec for $42 an hour as an intern. And we know for sure that Microsoft and Google are also paying summer internships that are paying in $30,000 and $40,000 a summer to do that. And I thought, man, I wish I was a college student. Maybe I would quit my job here and take an internship at Amazon. And so the coasts are, the wages on the coast are high, but the kids don't see oftentimes is the cost of living difference. And I think one of the things we need to do if you're here in Omaha, one of the things we need to do is figure out a way to emphasize that. It's super, super hard to convince them that $42 an hour in Southern California is going to get sucked up faster. And I know at UP, right, you guys have stuff all over the country, right? You challenge with this as well. That money will get sucked up. I'm from the Bay Area, so I understand how expensive it is just to find a house, if you find one at all, in the Bay Area. And so that's a big challenge, I think, for us in doing that. One of the nice things about local recruiting, and when we catch them in high school, and surprisingly enough, I'm starting to talk with the Bellevue school system about junior high at this point, which is crazy talk to think that we would go back into the junior high, but we need to do it. Keeping the kids local means they don't go to the coasts and see that sometimes, or see those wages, and we keep them here in the Midwest where they understand the cost of living, right? So that's some of the things we're doing is trying to keep the local kids around, and doing that. You want to talk?
Yeah. Just like Jim, we're really rolling out our high school outreach program as well. There's a survey that comes out every year, the Manpower Survey, which we're all very familiar with, which really does a deep dive into the entire workforce. And when we take a look at the top 10 toughest to fill positions globally, from a Valmont perspective, we hire on a regular basis 9 out of 10 of those positions, which is a huge challenge. And so when we identify what our critical roles are, getting into the high schools and the junior highs as well is absolutely critical from an employment brand perspective of really ingraining your value proposition from an organization, what you can offer to these kids from a career path perspective. And what we're getting ready to roll out too is an actual sponsorship program, whether it's for engineers, electromechanical technicians, skilled trade type individuals, where we're saying, getting into the high schools, building our employment brand and saying, we will pay for you to go to school to get the degree that you need, and getting that loyalty from them before they even step on a college campus. So, and what we're finding is, and from previous experience that I have, what we're actually finding is the retention for these students when they come into a program, a sponsorship program where they have that loyalty and that loyalty to an organization, our retention has been 60 to 70% after 2 to 3 years of employment. So.
You also have to talk about the millennial problem right? Yeah. These millennials, while we say loyalty, these millennials are not loyal in a lot of ways. They have been told they can do anything, they're gonna do anything, and then they've been told that they need to get a variety of experiences. And that works against us a little bit. I think it does for us anyways in these internship programs, because I'll bring them in for a couple years and then they'll say to me, well, I have to go somewhere else. And I'm like, no, you don't. We'll provide great opportunities for you. No. I've got to go somewhere else and do something and see new things. And they do it very rapidly, is what we're finding. So 1 or 2 years, and they're getting an itch to move somewhere else. And so they move around. So that's another challenge for us in these programs when we think about, I mean, I could conceivably have an intern for 6 years before they even graduate from college in our current program. We could have that. We're only 3 years into it, so we don't have it yet. But I've already lost a few who've said, I want to move to Austin, or I want to check out, get an opportunity to check out California. So that's a big challenge here.
Yeah, I think it's both a challenge and an opportunity at the same time, right? So from the perspective of employers needing to learn from the millennials, one of the things that has been interesting for us is things like learning and development and how we've changed our learning and development space as technology has evolved, right? So there's some efficiencies in blended learning from an effectiveness standpoint. But we've gotten heavy into things like simulation as a learning device. So picture somebody that's a new hire working as a switchman brakeman in a yard. Can I simulate their work environment before they go out and perform this safety-sensitive work? And the cool part is it's been many of those millennials that have worked on those types of projects. The other piece is, and other folks sitting up here too have this same part of their value proposition, is how can I show you within the same organization the diversity of employment opportunities, right? So one of the things that we like to educate folks on is, hey, if you're interested, you can change career paths several times without ever changing where your paycheck is coming from. Then my last comment about the outreach down to the K through 12 level, another opportunity, so it's not just about getting to the kids and educating the kids, there's also the piece that I call influencing the influencers, right? Which is the teachers, the administrators, and the parents. I think there's a big opportunity for us to continue to educate there.
And those parents and teachers essentially become an extension of our recruiting process once they're influenced. And I had one more point to make. The other, following up with all the points that have made, I think there's also something to, we want to do whatever we can to keep the millennials and our employees employed and engaged within our organizations, but I think organizations are also having to look at a reentry program that, at the end of the day, some of these kids are going to leave, these new employees are going to leave to get new opportunities, but how do we position ourselves to know our managers, everyone, to understand that we absolutely, sometimes it's great to go get new experiences, but we want them to ultimately come back once they get even more experience. So understanding what that process looks like within your organization as well.
That's a change in mindset, right, Katie? Because maybe of the past it would be, well, that employee's leaving, we're done with them, we're not, they've left. But it's kind of changing a mindset and a culture.
Well, you have to teach the organization to accept that, right? And that's all the way down to the staff, your staff and employees, because they'll get bitter that people leave sometimes. And we've had some of our folks say, is it okay to come back? And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And they didn't feel that way because the loyalty, the brand loyalty in the organization. And then if you leave, like you said, and it's not just HR or the managers, but they get that vibe from their employees. We just had one of our guys go to New York to do a startup, to get a startup on 3D printing for jewelry, which was incredible. He got some venture capital funding, and it was a big surprise to us. And he was a big, important player in our space. And man, I worked double hard to make sure the organization, and I told him, you are welcome back. When this doesn't work, we hope it does. But when it doesn't work, you've got to play. So you have the best landing, you have the best parachute ever, because we're going to hire you back the second you need a job.
Yep.
And I think that when we talk about that, we have to be ready for that.
Yep. So Jeremy's been smiling. We've been talking about millennials. He works at Creighton University, has been for a very long time, and he works with millennials every single day. So I wanted to toss it a little bit because these businesses are shining examples of how businesses have thought, what can we be doing? How can we be tackling these problems? But from a community perspective, we've really got to be looking at partners that we have, like universities, like colleges, like Offutt Air Force Base and other entities like that are bringing talent into our region, and how can we capture that? Because that doesn't happen every day. Our colleges and universities and military operations are some of the biggest opportunities we have to really capture new talent. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what you both have done to partner with businesses to really make sure that your talent is going from the experience you're providing them today to then connecting them to employment and opportunity in the future. So, Jeremy or Barry?
Sure, absolutely. So the national demographic of where our students are coming from is becoming much, much more diverse. I don't know if many people in the room realize this, but at Creighton University, only 20% of our students are actually from Nebraska. So we're pulling in 80% of our students that come and enroll at the university that are not from here. Heavily focused on the Midwestern and Southern states. However, we have a growing number of students coming from the West Coast, some of the East Coast, particularly now that we're in the Big East Conference. But the good news is 58% of our graduates from our class of 2014 actually stayed in Omaha for employment. So only 20% are from here. Now, some of those that are from here do end up leaving just to try a different city or an opportunity outside and may come back. But 58%, nearly 60% of our students are staying here for business, for nursing, medical, dental, law, and other government and nonprofit opportunities. A big part of that, and it's already sort of been mentioned, is the internship programs. If your company, your clients do not have an internship program, you're missing the boat on recruiting and retaining talent. According to the National Association of Colleges and Employers, having an internship program, and if there's an offer made, 60 to 70% of those students will accept that offer if an internship offer is made for a full-time employment. So having that is a huge draw and retention plan for companies that want to keep students and talent here in the area. So having that internship program is huge. What I'm starting to see now as more of a trend, as we talked about even about getting into the high school levels, companies are offering internship opportunities to younger and younger students. So you'd think of normally a traditional internship for juniors and seniors. We have Fortune 500 companies that are hiring freshmen and sophomores now, and some even in high schools. So, so that getting that talent earlier and developing talent, they may not have had certain classes in certain programs, or SQL or SAP or whatever technologies or finance or accounting, whatever positions you might be recruiting for, but training and developing those students at a younger age and getting them more projects, relevant projects, longer term, because the benefit of UNO and Creighton and a lot of the other great schools that we have in the area is that they can work year-round, part-time during the school year, full-time in the summer. So companies are investing a lot of time and money into these students, and a lot of those are reaping the benefits of keeping those students here.
Well, as you can see, I'm the one person up here on this panel that's not trying to keep people. I'm trying to get rid of them. So with that, it's very difficult for the military community, and for those of you who've probably been associated with the military probably understand that. When I go back to my hometown and tell them what I've done the last 40 years, I get that deer in the headlights look like you're in the desert doing what? So it's very difficult also for the military member, because most of our people come directly out of high school, if they're an enlisted person, so they've never really applied for a job. They don't know what their talents are. Then we get the college graduates that get commissioned officers, and they come straight out of college or a ROTC program, so they haven't had a lot of experience in the community around them, and actually written resumes, done interviews, and things like this. So they become what we call institutionalized. It's kind of like being in prison for 20 years before you retire. You've been told what to do, where to go, what you're going to eat, sleep, and everything else for 20 years. Now all of a sudden you're on your own. How do I do this? So it's very tough. Our favorite phrase is, what do you want to be when you grow up, when you leave the military? Because Uncle Sam's been taking care of you. So this is a stressful time for our people, and we've discovered that over the years, that it is very stressful for them. So the transition program that now has become mandatory under congressional mandate, that every military person exiting the military is required to go through this process, is a partnership between the Department of Labor and the Veterans Affairs. And how we partner with the local community through the Department of Labor and ourselves is we get to know the local community as far as the people at this table and other enterprises out there that could possibly employ our people. The hardest thing for them to do, again, though, is to translate those skills from working on a B-52 aircraft into what they could do on the outside. Very difficult. But the one thing the military does for them is they have this up-or-out policy where the military people are not allowed to stay in the same job for a long period of time. They have to move into supervisory management roles. They have to learn budgeting. They have to learn to work with people. A lot of the things that these people have done in their careers to move up in the world, the military's done the same thing. It's just been a different type of track to do that. And that's how they get to a leadership position. They grow their own. So they've handled a $2 million budget. They've handled facilities maintenance. They've done these things, but they don't understand that that translates in the civilian world to good employment. So we have to help them with that. And these folks here also are very helpful with that. Tammy's come out and sat on our employment panel where she's got to be interviewed from the military people, and she's been able to give her perspective to the military folks on how do we look at you? What do we look for when we look for someone in that job? If you want someone in IT, we've got a lot of skills there. But then again, they don't know always how to translate that into the civilian world and make themselves marketable. So that's what we try to do. And with that, we've developed, like I said before, the local program here that's hopefully going to go statewide, and we're getting some national recognition as well. I've got over 150 local employers here that have agreed to be mentors for our military personnel. So we put them together for a 6-month period and no restrictions or rules. But we give them a chance to be mentored by someone that's been in the civilian community all their life and can share those expertise with them on what it takes to grow in the civilian world and how can I translate what I know into the civilian workforce. It also gives the civilians an opportunity to meet the military world and understand more about what they do and what we can offer from Offutt Air Force Base. So it's been a great relationship, and we have over 100 people now in the local program, and we've had 90 people successfully graduate out of that and find really good employment. And it's been a win-win for both sides. So if we can develop this far enough, we'd like this to be reached throughout the military services, wherever there's a base in a community, to be able to reach out to the partnerships and develop this. So that's where we're at right now, Sarah.
So if I could build on that from an employer's perspective, what a rich source of talent. So, and not just talent, but diverse talent spread all across the country. So back to the UP footprint, I told you that we hired about 6,000 folks last year, about 28% of whom had prior military service. Now, you heard the perspective in terms of what's done pre-separation to get the candidate ready. There's also some opportunity for mindset shift and work on the part of the employer as well. So I talked earlier about high tech and high touch. One of the things that we've had to get our arms around in recent years are any of our recruiters go through a educational process around the nomenclature used in the military, the hierarchy used in the military, how to build an action plan to recruit on base X, Y, or Z, the transition planning classes, how to get into those. And the same thing I said about the school system, I would say about the military. The continued opportunity for us is to figure out how to build those relationships sooner, pre-separation. And then from a high-tech standpoint, one of the things that we started to do via our up.jobs website about 18 months ago is we've got a tool out there called Military Skills Translator. So this is the how do I build the bridge between these experiences and capabilities that I've established in the military, job title XYZ, what does that look like with this particular employer? So there's tools out there to help build the bridge. We have put some videos out there of folks that have made the transition from military to Union Pacific and what was that experience like. And then we have 8 what we call employee resource groups, Black Employee Network, Latino Employee Network. Anyway, one of our newest employee resource groups is UP Vets, which are a group of, as the name would imply, veterans who have been a key part of our outreach, recruiting, and retention strategy. So it's not just about getting folks in the door, but how do you provide the support structure once they start? And one of the things that our UP Vets group has done is the first 6 months, anyone who's a new hire to us coming from the military established a mentoring program. So how do I have a sounding board to talk about my challenges and somebody who has walked where I've walked? So just some perspective from an employer.
Yep. Great. So I told you I was going to try to toss it to the audience and take your questions. I would imagine some of their comments have spurred some ideas or thoughts. Do I have anybody that maybe has a question for the panel? Don't be shy. I said there were T-shirts. Oh, all right.
This is for Jim, or anybody that want to answer this, but you said that the problem with millennials is that they want to leave all the time. Do you think that recruiting
Yeah, it's absolutely a risk we'll just have to take. I mean, some of it, it's a mind shift. We have to shift too and say, you know, we're not going to be able to retain everybody. I've got to get more organizations doing it so that we can share. We'll be sharing these employees around the country as we train them. From a STEM perspective, we've got to do a better job of getting those students on those STEM programs earlier anyway. So we just need organizations jumping in there, giving students STEM opportunities. Especially U.S. students who are lacking that experience right now. But no, absolutely. I've got to go into it with a mindset that I'm going to start with 300, and 5 years later, I'm going to have 5 from that standpoint, right? But that being said, it's better than 0, right? 5 is greater than 0. So I'm okay with that. It's coming from an old school mindset of we're giving you a great opportunity, you should stay around for a while. It just isn't going to work. We have to break that. We kind of have to break that mindset and say, well, we are going to lose some. I think, but leaving that safety net, like you talked about, to say, but come back. You know, go experience something, because it's, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to make them better. Anyways, we encourage our students to do something abroad. You know, I always say, man, if you can go overseas and do something, you're going to get a great experience. So, yeah. Anybody want to add to that?
I mean, I've seen, I guess this is the statistics that I have from recruiting out of the high school are over the course of the 5-year period that I oversaw a sponsorship program when we recruited about 120 students directly out of high school. The actual retention rate for those students after 2 years of graduating from school was 60 to 70%. And so I don't necessarily have anything to compare that to prior to the sponsorship program, but I was very pleased with those numbers. And I think a lot of it had to do with developing that employment loyalty earlier on.
Yeah, the loyalty is worth it for sure. Yeah.
Just a couple things that I build on. The comment around the mindset shift. From my perspective, so much of it is manager education, right? So somebody who's tenured, been in the organization, very, very used to what I'll call a production mindset. Here's what needs to get done. We've had to spend a lot of time with our managers. Make sure that you're also helping folks to understand big picture why. How does what I'm doing contribute? And then more focused development discussions. So not just production, but production capability as well. How does it all fit? And then to build on the keeping in touch with folks who do leave, alumni networks can be a very, very powerful thing. So how do you establish alumni networks? And we've not cracked that nut, but I would agree that that's a rich resource.
Go ahead.
So on the summer internship, this is addressed to anyone who has a summer internship program. What are you paying folks?
Yeah, no, I'm in the trenches with that, so I can answer it. So the high school kids today make 10 an hour while they're there, which is pretty competitive for Omaha for a summer job. A little bit more than you'd make in fast food from that standpoint, but it's a lot of education as well. The college students make anywhere between $15 to $25 an hour based on the experience they have and where they're coming from. Our East Coast students make a little bit more than they do here in the Midwest, just because the cost of living is a lot higher out there in Washington, D.C., where that is. So those are kind of some of the ranges that the students make from a dollar standpoint. Anybody else?
Yeah, from our internship perspective for our IT and our engineering students, which those are two of our identified critical roles for the organization, they make $20 an hour.
While I don't know the rate, I talked about the fact that we bring in folks from outside of town. So there's the hourly rate plus meal vouchers, the housing, transportation vouchers, so it's an entire package.
Yeah, we cover for the college students, we cover their summer housing if they're coming in
Yep.
from out of town. And so we've just switched over to the UP model, following their great example, and we house them at Scott. Although we've looked at Creighton, and Creighton's making a run at doing this as well in their facilities in the summer. And so that way in the future, that'll be an opportunity for us to house the kids at Creighton, which I think is key for these these college kids to see local, especially if they're coming out from out of town, and see some local schools as well. That might attract a few of them to maybe make a way to come to the Midwest.
Yep, totally. I think we have a lot of questions. Go ahead right here.
Two real
Okay.
quickly. I'd like to hear from Katie what your assessment is of the quality of elementary and secondary public education system in Nebraska. Are we doing things right or not? Is it adequately funded? And maybe hear from Jamie real briefly. 6,000 people hired by UP last year. How kid straight out of high school with nothing more than a high school diploma. Is everybody IT?
I think what's been fascinating over the last 5 to 7 years from the educational standpoint is I field a lot of phone calls from whether they're elementary school teachers, middle school teachers, and high school teachers reaching out and saying, I want to come shadow. I want to come learn about the skill set and what you're looking for in the individuals that you're recruiting into, whether it's STEM, whether it's a welder, whatever the case may be. But they are actually reaching out and wanting to figure out how they can mirror their curriculum to what they know business and industry are looking for when as those students grow older. And so my perspective is I think they're doing wonderful things to try to match the skills that are needed from industry due to that, and really trying to help students match their hobbies and their passion and show them how they can turn those types of hobbies and passions into a career. So I've been very impressed with the outreach and the efforts that they're making to try to align and understand what business and industry are looking for today.
So rough numbers, the 6,000 that we hired last year, about 4,500 or so went into jobs such as what I call train service, so switchman, brakeman, conductors, or electricians working in one of our shops, machinists, welders, again, all across the UP system. The other jobs, so you mentioned IT, marketing and sales, our college recruiting program, dispatchers. While I don't know the numbers in terms of high school versus a bachelor's degree or a graduate degree, I can tell you in terms of what we require, those 4,500 jobs, the majority of them don't require more than a high school diploma, right? The key is work experience, a work environment that's 24/7, 365, outdoor, all weather conditions. So there's all kinds of attractive things from a military recruiting standpoint where my recruiters often get back and talk about going to a hiring session, and I call it the 2x4 speech. So hitting the candidates over, this is how dirty and bad this job is, and the military folks shrug their shoulders and say, hey, I was getting shot at. That doesn't sound so bad to me, right? So the 6,000 jobs, there was a great deal of diversity in there. What's interesting to me, though, is when I see the reports, so these jobs that don't require more than a high school degree or a high school diploma, we've got folks with PhDs, law degrees. So part of it's a passion for the work, right? And from a recruiting standpoint, not all labor markets are created the same. So recruiting in, say, North Platte, Nebraska is a little different than recruiting in Omaha or Chicago, so forth. And then keep in mind from a wage standpoint, my starting rates for the majority of those jobs are dictated by the collective bargaining agreements, right? So the wage may look very, very good in city X, but in LA, San Francisco, so forth, the cost of living factor comes into play. And then when I talked about STEM earlier, I highlighted IT, but it's broader than that. Electricians in my 15 to 17 shops across the system are equally challenging. So not all labor markets are created the same.
Great. All right, right here. You get rewarded for sitting in the front. We'll move our way to the back.
Question is on partnerships. I'm hearing a lot of you working with people that maybe historically you would not have worked with before. You went out and put them in doors. I think of the welding center in Fremont that Belmont did with the Fremont Public Schools. Examples like that. How have those relationships or partnerships evolved, and where do you see them going in terms of collaborating with different educational institutions and people coming together that haven't before because there's such a need?
Yeah, I think we got a great chamber, and I'm not just saying that, but I mean, the chambers work, at least for me, they've given us opportunities to speak or to get groups together to talk about these kinds of things. And then, we've reached out to we reached out to UNO and to Creighton. We show up on campus to be there, and they let us come, and there's great partnerships there. And that's one of the great things about Omaha. We're a little isolated in a lot of ways, and so it gives us an opportunity. We are all we have, right? And so we got to work together in a lot of those cases. So it's just reaching out and reaching in. And one of the things I've noticed as I've started doing this over the last couple of years is that even in talent, as we're recruiting, we don't fight too much with each other over those. I mean, there's some that come in here and swoop or pull a whole bunch of people out of an organization as they're recruiting heavily, but it's a pretty good environment to recruit in from that standpoint. I don't know.
not only do we generally not fight, when I think about what's in the opportunities column, we from time to time, so picture you're relocating a family here, right? And party A in the family is coming here, but party B is leaving a good job somewhere else. How can we better coordinate? Some of it we do ad hoc, but I think about things like that for how do we work together to take the next step.
I saw a hand all the way in the back.
Jim, you gotta hit on that in relocation. When UP looks at it, how does Omaha stack up in all your markets that you're at? And we do the attractive stuff. And for those people around the country, first real estate, we want to see you guys grow out there. One of those ways is relocation of talent here. How does Omaha stack up in terms of
Well, so from a system standpoint, the majority of the movement will be in and out of Omaha, and we've learned that I call them the whirlwind visits, that we've had to slow down a bit and make sure that the entire family, in many instances, gets a chance to see not just the building, not just downtown, but the entire community. My HR team and the hiring managers have learned to do a better job at the intake stage of listening and learning for what is the individual and whoever's coming with them interested in. So I think about a recent example. We had somebody that moved from Detroit, huge hockey fans, so they wanted to see the community and see certain things, but the light bulb went on for us. Well, let's get them connected with some relationships we have at UNO and the hockey program over there. So Omaha definitely stacks up. Again, though, I'd say that we've got a great start, more work to do around marketing and branding ourselves, particularly early on in the dialogue with somebody who hasn't been here before.
We took our college students on what we call the Omaha Crawl last year, and so they came in, and I have 10 locations, strategic locations in the city of Omaha: Fontenelle Forest, the zoo, Warner Park. We think about Nebraska crossings out there. West Roads from a mall standpoint because it's easy to get to on the bus. And on a Saturday, we just drove them to each one of them. And every single one of them said to me, I had no idea Omaha had this many things to offer in this kind of way. And they were super impressed with, and then I didn't have to do, on weekend events, I didn't have to schedule anything. They just went out on their own and did stuff. And how did I know? I saw it on Facebook, and I was disappointed they didn't invite me. You know, hey, what about me? You know, they're having a great time. So how do we stack up? I think we've got some world-class stuff here in Omaha that we just don't show off enough. In the art museums and SAC Museum and those kinds of things that we have. We've got some including a great Air Force base down there. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Just to piggyback on that question about how Omaha stacks up, I'm from southern Florida, born and raised, and lived in 17 different countries throughout my 40 years with the Air Force and active duty and civilian. But we have right now, if we ask our transition classes, which we run twice a month out there at Offutt, about 70% of the people plan on staying here in Omaha, even from the other locations that they've been at. Part of the reason is this is a very accepting, warm community towards the military, and they love it here. This has been a very open community. They've provided all kinds of benefits and support for the military community here. And so they like that. They like raising their children here. They like the school systems. They like the benefits. I don't think I've ever been in a community this small that really has the things to offer that this community does in all the places that I've lived. I've been in places where I could drive 40 miles to get it, but I've never been in a place where it's had it all in that one center area. So I think there's a misconception sometimes that the military is leaving. In fact, the chamber approached me one time. We want to keep the military here. You are keeping the military here. They're staying. There's very few people that are leaving. In fact, there's a lot of them that are having to leave, that are maintaining their houses, renting them out, and they're coming back later on because they like the Omaha community so much. So it's very favorable for you.
Good.
I should add, too, that so what I commented on was directly the candidate and the perception of Omaha. My comment earlier around influencing the influencers, one of the examples I'll give you of something we've done for a couple of years now is during College World Series week, we'll invite the schools that we recruit at, faculty members, administrators, groups of students to come up and spend about a day with us. And in the morning, it's bring them into UP Center, educate them on what's going on in the business. Afternoon, take them over to a College World Series baseball game, and then after that, tours of Omaha, right? So educate the faculty, the administrators that are from out of the area on what all Omaha has to offer. I think that's a big deal as well, right? So the kids will cycle through the schools, but how do you leave a lasting impression with those that stay?
Jeremy, you want to talk?
Yeah, I can just add quickly on that as far as the recruiting college talent perspective. So our yield rate is the biggest challenge for us is just getting them to Omaha to come to campus and see Omaha. When prospective students, and this is the time of year where high school seniors are making their college decisions, they have until May 1st to make their deposits and decide where they're going to go to college. So in the past few weeks, we've had over 1,000 students come into Omaha, many of them for the first time ever coming to Nebraska or Omaha in general, outside of the local Midwestern students. Our yield rate is usually about 60-65% though. Once we get them on campus, even if they've never only been here one time, they will ultimately end up enrolling at Creighton. So, and I'm sure other universities probably have similar yield rates. For us, we definitely do tours for every student that comes into campus, not only showing them around Creighton, but also around Omaha. We do the trolley tour to Midtown, downtown. We show them the vibrant business community. For us, the unemployment rate and the business community is a huge selling point. Many students don't realize that Creighton is literally within walking distance within 5 Fortune 500 companies, which is, I don't think there's a lot of business schools or schools in general in the country that can say that. We have 5 Fortune 1000 companies headquartered. We have over 50 Fortune 500 companies have operations here that are not headquartered here. So those are some of our big selling points to students. You come here, you're going to get internships, you're going to get a job if you'd like to stay here. So again, we're keeping about 60% of those. So I love the ideas that were coming around through some of the mentoring and shadowing. A lot of our students were developing even more aggressive programs for giving students that opportunity to engage with business and other healthcare professionals and other industries to do shadowing and mentoring. The tours of businesses is something that we take a tremendous advantage of. The athletic events as well, whether it's Creighton basketball or baseball games, that's usually tied into a lot of our visits as well, and that's a big selling point. But we don't know anybody that has not been to Omaha for the first time that doesn't tell us that how incredibly impressed and surprised they are with how great the city is. I actually just met with a student yesterday who's a junior from Los Angeles, and she wants to stay in Omaha after she graduates because she can't stand the traffic in Los Angeles. And we complain about traffic here in Omaha, but have you ever been to LA?
Yep. Katie, did you have a?
My only comment is when it comes to relocating people, no matter, I think about a recent relocation we had from Sydney, Australia, for an executive to come to Omaha, Nebraska. At the end of the day, there's no one size fits all. It's up to our teams and our recruiters to figure out what is it that is, what are they looking for? What's important to them? And typically it's winning over their spouse or their family that really is going to get them to Omaha. And if we can figure out collectively what is it that's important to them, what do they value, 9 times out of 10, Omaha offers it. We just have to figure out what that is, get them here, and show them around. And we've relocated people from all over the world to Omaha, Nebraska, and they're staying. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, and as you've heard from each of these guys, this is a really personal process that you've had to make it. It's not recruiting like it used to be where you just post the job and you'd have the people come in. They've kind of gotten into the minds of this talent, at least the companies that are having a lot of success with it. So, yes, right here on the edge.
This may be an elemental question, but what can you all suggest of real estate professionals to assist you in bringing people into either this area or the North Flats, the other locations that you have, facilities, to make it attractive, I guess, or what elements of real estate industry assist your endeavors?
From my perspective, I think so much of it is having your very crisp elevator speech ready to go around exactly what we're talking about, which is what is everything that Omaha has to offer, and then ask questions and listen close around, to Katie's point, what is it that the individual party or parties are interested in, and be prepared to build a bridge such that if they want to do a deep dive in that space, that you help to build that bridge quickly so they get the information that they want. So I think it's branding, it's communication.
Yeah, and more than just the real estate piece of it, but the whole package, especially in the Omaha area, of selling the city as much as it is selling the real estate. It's a good opportunity to promote that because they want to know why. Why do I need to stay?
One is a comment and a question, and that is, I have two daughters who recently graduated college. One is, unfortunately for our community, is relocating to Denver. The other one is trying to secure employment in Omaha. And one of the things I noticed that was really a challenge for them, and it's totally different than what I learned in my career opportunities, is everything is done so electronically that they don't give much feedback. So they'll apply for something on one of your, website opportunities, and they'll be checking their opportunity, and eventually it will just say no longer being considered, or the position's been filled, and they get no feedback. And I think that's really a challenge for some of these young people, seeking employment.
I think a focus because of the low unemployment rate and the process that you're talking about, candidate experience is huge for every company. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find an organization that isn't trying to figure out what is our current candidate experience, what type of feedback are we getting, and how can we continue to improve that process. So that's great feedback. And I think it's something that, at least from the Valmont perspective, that we are constantly trying to figure out how, although we have an online application and a lot of the process is electronic because in some ways it is easier for the applicant to get their information in front of you, we don't want to lose that personal touch. And so I can say from the Valmont perspective that we recognize that we need to figure out how to bring that personal touch back into the process or improve it. But the candidate experience is huge, and it's something that, to have a competitive advantage with the low market rate, it's something that every company has to be focusing on.
I too appreciate the feedback, and I've always called it high tech and high touch, and we as employers have got to continue to try and figure that out and not swing the pendulum. There's all kinds of advantages to going high tech, but as you point out, there's some disadvantages as well. But I'll flip that around to the other side of the equation as well and say the job seeker ought not put all the eggs in the basket of a purely high tech approach as well. So I think about college recruiting in particular, and for us, so much of it is still so relationship driven. Who's the person that I met to campus that came to talk to my student organization or the career fair or so forth? So I think for both sides of the equation, it's a matter of getting the mix where it should be.
All right. You guys were great. Give yourselves a round of applause for all those great questions that you asked, and also for our panel up here. I lost track of time a little bit, and it's about 11:30, which I think is the close time for the breakout. I would say if you have any questions that didn't get answered, there were a few hands. I think these guys would be welcome or willing to answer those questions for you. Also, I'm always a resource too. I work at the Greater Omaha Chamber. My contact info is on the website, but it's Sarah Moylan. Thank you all for attending. Hopefully it was worthwhile and you gained quite a bit from it. Thanks to our panel as well. So thank you.